Picture yourself standing in a forest sometime around 300 million years ago. The trees rise higher than any building you've ever stood next to, their canopy so dense the midday sun arrives at ground level as a dim, greenish haze. The air smells richer, almost intoxicating, like the inside of a greenhouse pushed past its limits. Every breath feels slightly too full in a way you can't quite name. And somewhere above you, something is moving, something large enough that you can hear it before you can see it, cutting through the upper canopy with a wingspan wider than you are tall. You're already dying. You just don't know it yet. The problem is the air. The Carboniferous atmosphere holds somewhere between 30 and 35% oxygen, nearly double what your lungs are built for. At those concentrations, oxygen acts less like fuel and more like poison. Free radical damage accelerates. Tissue oxidizes faster than it can repair itself. And if you survive long enough to notice, the environment would finish the job anyway. At 35% oxygen, even wet plants can ignite. A single lightning strike in a Carboniferous forest didn't start a fire. It started a continent. Charcoal deposits in coal seams from this period make up as much as 70% of the organic matter in some layers, meaning vast stretches of forest burned and burned again routinely at scales that have no equivalent on Earth today. That coal we've been pulling out of the ground for 2 centuries to run the Industrial Revolution? That's them. Compressed, incinerated Carboniferous forests. We built the modern world on the ashes of a planet that would have killed us instantly. And the Carboniferous is just chapter 1. Insects don't breathe the way we do. Instead of lungs, oxygen diffuses passively through tiny tubes called tracheae running through their exoskeleton. An efficient system, but one with a hard-sized ceiling because oxygen can only diffuse so far. In today's atmosphere, that ceiling is small. In the Carboniferous, it nearly doubled. The result was Meganeura, a dragonfly relative with a wingspan of 70 centimeters, the size of a modern crow, hunting through forests that had no birds, no bats, nothing airborne to threaten it. Arthropleura was stranger still, a millipede relative over 2 meters long and half a meter wide, its fossilized trackways pressed into ancient rock in Scotland. You can see the stride pattern. You can measure the body width from the impressions. 2 meters of segmented armor, moving through the undergrowth, afraid of nothing, because in its world there was genuinely nothing to fear. Change one variable, the concentration of a single gas, and the upper limits of animal size on an entire planet shift. Then came the Permian. And where the Carboniferous was a world of extremes, the Permian nearly ended everything. The continents had fused into Pangaea, and without separate ocean basins to circulate heat, there were no moderating currents, no seasonal relief in the deep interior. Surface temperatures at the center of Pangaea may have exceeded 70 degrees Celsius. Nothing lived there. On the coastlines, the creatures were extraordinary. Dimetrodon, the sailback predator everyone misidentifies as a dinosaur, was actually a synapsid, more closely related to you and me than to any reptile running warm-blooded experiments 280 million years before true mammals existed. In the oceans, Helicoprion carried a circular whorl of teeth resembling a rotating saw blade inside its jaw. For over a century, paleontologists argued about where those teeth even sat. In 2013, CT scanning of a preserved specimen finally resolved it. The whorl rotated inward as the mouth closed, drawing prey deeper with each bite cycle, unable to escape. The answer was stranger than any of the guesses. That tends to be the rule with Permian life. Then 252 million years ago, the Siberian Traps began erupting, not for days or years, but for roughly 2 million years. A volcanic plume the size of Western Europe punching through the crust, releasing enough lava to bury the continental United States under a kilometer of rock. But what made it uniquely catastrophic wasn't the lava. The region sits on top of some of the thickest coal and carbonate deposits on Earth. As magma intruded through those layers, it burned through them, releasing massive pulses of CO2, methane, mercury vapor, and sulfur dioxide. Evidence confirmed in 2020 shows rocks along the Angara River packed with combusted coal incorporated directly into volcanic material. The Siberian Traps weren't simply a volcanic event. They were the largest industrial coal-burning event in Earth's history, lasting 2 million years with no off switch. Global temperatures rose by 8 to 10 degrees. The oceans acidified, then suffocated. Mercury rained down from the stratosphere for thousands of years, still traceable in rock layers on every continent. When it was over, 96% of all marine species were gone. 70% of terrestrial vertebrates. It took 10 million years for biodiversity to recover. What rebuilt from that near-total collapse tells you everything about how life actually works. The Triassic that followed ran evolutionary prototypes at speed. With most body plans erased, biology was open source. Anything that could survive would fill whatever space it found. Catastrophic had a neck longer than the rest of its body, composed of just 13 hyperelongated vertebrae. For 170 years, paleontologists debated whether it lived on land or water. In 2020, CT scanning of crushed fossil skulls resolved that, and something more surprising. The small and large specimens weren't juveniles and adults. Cross-sections of their bones showed full growth rings in both. They were two entirely separate species, distinct in size and diet, sharing the same coastal waters simultaneously, each having arrived at the same bizarre neck design for different purposes. Evolution caught diverging from a single template into two parallel experiments at once. By the time the Jurassic arrived, the dinosaurs had won, and the world they inherited was nothing like the one the films show. CO2 ran 4 to 8 times higher than today. No ice caps. Forests grew at the poles. We found fossil wood in Antarctica from this period, trees growing in soil now buried under kilometers of ice. In that heat, the scaling laws of biology stretched toward their outer limits. Patagotitan maiorum weighed 69 tons. Its femur alone stands taller than most adults. But here's what rarely gets discussed. The ecosystem that supported animals at that scale only worked because the CO2 concentrations were feeding extraordinarily dense vegetation. The greenhouse atmosphere was the engine of the entire system. The sauropods didn't exist despite the world's chemistry. They existed because of it. The predators matched accordingly. Recent research has substantially revised Spinosaurus. Its bones were unusually dense, reducing buoyancy, and 2020 analysis of tail fossils from Morocco revealed a fin structure more reminiscent of a fish than any known dinosaur, confirming it spent most of its life in water. Not a land predator that occasionally waded. A 15-meter river hunter moving through waterways that once flowed through what is now the center of the Sahara Desert. The age of large dinosaurs lasted over 160 million years. Our genus Homo is roughly 3 million years old. We've existed for less than 2% of the time dinosaurs held the planet. They didn't pass through geological time. They defined it. Then the asteroid. 66 million years ago, a rock roughly 12 kilometers across struck the shallow sea at Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula at 20 kilometers per second. The energy released in the first second exceeded the combined yield of every nuclear weapon ever built, many times over. Rock vaporized. The shock waves circled the globe. Ejecta re-entered the atmosphere across the entire planet simultaneously, heating the air as it fell, briefly raising surface temperatures above the boiling point of water across wide regions. Then came the winter, soot and sulfate aerosols blocking sunlight globally for months, possibly years. Photosynthesis stopped. Every food chain built on plants collapsed. Animals that had dominated for 160 million years had no answer for any of it. But something survived. Small, generalist, burrowing mammals that could eat almost anything and wait. Ground-dwelling birds whose food, seeds, was buried rather than standing. Crocodilians whose metabolism could slow to near nothing. In the deep ocean near hydrothermal vents, microbial communities that had never relied on sunlight. Evolution doesn't restart from zero. It reassembles from scraps. And those scraps built, over 66 million years, into elephants, whales, eagles, and us sitting here pulling these stories out of compressed rock. Every creature in this story was a logical outcome of extreme conditions. Meganeura existed because oxygen expanded what was physically possible. The sauropods existed because CO2 fed the plants that fed the giants. Even the asteroid selected specifically for small, flexible, patient survivors, and those survivors inherited everything. Earth has never been a stable backdrop to the story of life. It has always been an active pressure system, constantly rewriting the rules. And life, every single time, has filled whatever shape the pressure left behind. What we're living on right now is just the current answer to 4 billion years of extreme questions. It isn't permanent. It never has been. And that's the most important thing the fossil record tells us. Creating these videos takes serious research and time, and I want to keep pushing the quality of what's possible here. If this is the kind of content you want to see more of, consider becoming a member. You're not just supporting the channel, you're giving me the time to go deeper.